when you present it with something, let's not repeat the same old, the same old. So one major thing about a bad habit is just simply filling in everything we see. We draw it, right? We're just gonna roughly draw it, but we're gonna start filling in. And I don't encourage this. I would like you to just see the big picture, see it kind of in a more abstract way first, and just map it quickly in large, huge areas. So let's start very roughly, draw this, and I will talk this whole theory. I will talk as we go. So how we draw is making, first I'm looking at this flower that, see, where were we? The big, so let's look at this big, the first flower, and I think that's going to be the focus of attention. But we are going to map it. First I see it almost like an oval. Just always look at the big picture. Forget the petals, the different elements, forget all the details. I'm just seeing this big oval right here, and it takes almost, look how much space there's to the edges, not too much. So it's very important to draw correctly. So I see it almost as an oval, and there is another shape right here. The other one is again very roughly shaped there. Maybe is another one over here popping, and sometimes it's very helpful to eliminate certain things that don't serve us well. We don't have to be, you know, slaves to our reference. We can completely eliminate some elements. Okay, so I see another bunch of flowers over here. So see how I'm just doing only the basic shape, and this way I'm basically mapping all the space that they take, and now we can go into the detail. But flowers, as we all know, especially when they're front view, they're quite symmetrical. This one is more of a 3/4 view, so figure out where this center is. So it's somewhere here, and that's where all the petals are coming out of. So very roughly I'm going to indicate this. Generally I would not even sketch it with pencil, just roughly kind of like put dots of where my spaces are. But for our own sake of having a peace of mind, let's kind of sketch a little bit. So quickly, so pay attention to the shapes of each individual petal. I mean, they're not smooth. There is a bit of a shape coming this way. So, and of course we count like 1, 2, 3, like make sure they're correct. Here we have this. Somehow we have another one over here. What I like about this reference is the high contrast. You see how the background is really dark and the flowers are so bright, and they have some light areas. That's the reason why I really picked that picture. I love it. And we'll have many other beautiful pictures similar to this. So very quickly, and again, don't worry if things are not exactly precise. This is not a portrait. Portraits should be precise, especially if we're painting realistically, but you know, nature can be, we can veer off and have our own interpretation. Of course, the same with portraits too, but that's a different class on how to interpret reality. So here we're just going to have a very rough sketch. You guys seeing, are you seeing the lines okay? Yeah? Yeah. Everybody's working hard. So also these stems are important, so make sure you have the right direction. They're kind of all coming out of that edge and creating a nice composition. And here is kind of a bud going this way. Okay. So,
Lyudmila, could you push your paper up a little bit?
you mean closer?
No, kind of towards the top.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, because you're losing the bottom. Okay, yes.
Yes.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Sure. Awesome. And the last one here, we have another one. So basically always look at the spaces from the edge to the element in relation to each other, you know, mentally, if not physically. Just draw verticals. Let's say, where does this end? When it ends, where does it hit? So these are principles of good drawing techniques and how to make sure we're drawing correctly. For this exercise, yeah, don't worry too much, don't sweat it, like just have a very rough sketch. We're just gonna really enjoy this because I hope this is almost as a warm-up. But yeah, if it takes longer, no worries, we can always paint the bouquet next time, or for that second, I keep pushing my paper, for that second session I can record the second one. So there's no stress, no worries. Principle number one. Yeah, something's majorly wrong here with this petal. So the direction, I see the direction is going this way, and here is going to be this petal, it's going to be here. So that's better, and this is now wider. So always check and recheck, make sure you have it correct, so nothing is off. And this is foreshortened. Some of these petals, obviously, when they're at an angle, they get foreshortened, and it's interesting to pay attention to those. So obviously, they're not as long, and we have a certain shape here going on. And we have these. What are they? What are these things called that are in the middle, in the center? There was a name for it. Okay, so just roughly, I'm just sketching this roughly.
They're called the stamens.
The stamens, yes, thank you. Thank you, perfect. All right, so here we just have a little bit of, so always think about this, the flower as a three-dimensional shape. And there is depth to it, so imagine how from here to there, this is going in. There is levels, some are closer, some are farther. Let me just add this. Here is another one. And I probably made them a little bit too big on my paper, but that's okay. Yeah, if you did the same thing, or if you made them bigger is better than making them too small in the paper. Somehow it's more striking compositionally. So just very, very quickly we're going to, okay, pay attention to this. So I like the different shapes. Each one has a very different shape. That is really interesting. Each one is a different shape of the same flower. Very, very nice. So main principles in watercolor, I know while you're still drawing, just so we reiterate from other classes of with you guys that we've taken, you know this already and you're probably dreaming about it. But we start wet on wet. We're gonna start most likely from the background, and we're gonna move in, kind of attack it from outside in. We will try to be alla prima, meaning mixing our darks right away and not building too many layers, 2 layers maximum. We're going to use a limited palette. Maybe was this reference horizontal or vertical when you received it? I'm now painting it vertical, but you may...
It was horizontal when I received it.
For some reason I must have just liked it vertical, so it's okay, we can paint it either way. Now you can paint it horizontal, but if you really like your painting, you can frame it. I mean, we're gonna paint it vertical, and if you like it, we'll paint it for horizontal, whatever, frame it. Never mind, I'm sorry. It's okay, I'm just getting lost in horizontal and vertical. So this is a lot of fun. So we're gonna wet the paper. Do we have spray bottles? Do you guys have spray bottles? Yes, I have one over here. You don't have to use spray bottle if you have a large brush. for the beginners, I'd like to show you my brushes for those who are starting out. So I have this really nice brush that is 2-inch wide. It's soft, very soft. So make sure you invest in that. These are different mop brushes. I bought them in China. They are actually calligraphy brushes, but they are sable. They are like real hair, make nice point. So they're great. And there are tons in the market. There's another one I bought at Jerry's Artorama. This is really wonderful, nice and thick with a point. So that's very important because it holds so much water, so much paint. It's great for just these big areas that we're gonna start with. And of course, some smaller brushes for detail, and the rigger brush, which is the brush with long hair, thin, long hair, hard to control, doing some fabulous refined work with it. All right, so tell me if you guys ready. We're ready to paint.
What colors should we start with?
All right, so
Can I ask a question? How are we wetting the entire paper or just the flowers?
we are going to wet the entire paper. You don't have to be, completely meticulous about wetting it. I mean, you can, let's leave some area here in the center, maybe dry, but because we're gonna start with the background, I would suggest we just wet pretty much the whole bottom and kind of around this little flower, but don't be afraid to wet your paper everywhere. And the colors that we're going to mix is, as you can see, this background is really dark and very intense. And I love this kind of, from what I see, yeah, on the computer it's kind of black, but we're going to make a nice dark color by mixing indigo and if you have quinacridone magenta or crimson, alizarin crimson, something cooler reds, any cool red will do. So I think we can mix those two. So why I prefer a cooler red is just we want to just push it back, but I don't want it to be too cold, like too cool. So just we're going to mix it. First though, is there everybody on board? Nobody's behind? Nobody's like still on the very first paint, like flower? If you are, speed it up and just really rough sketch. Don't worry too much about any details. This is going to be fun, and I always say no worries, no fear. You have to repeat to yourself, I'm not afraid, I'm really having fun, and it's going to show in your work. So I'm starting with a big brush, like wetting everywhere, clean water. And you can leave this area sort of a little bit dry because we won't get to it anyway, but yeah, maybe there will be some harder, more sharper edges there. So the goal is to start with the background, and then we slowly we're going to move into these flowers that are behind, kind of in the background, and they'll be soft. So we want how to achieve the softness is wet on wet. There won't be such hard edges. I know in the photo they look very hard edges everywhere, but we're not going to do that. So we interpret reality, we don't copy it, and you will see it's going to have a lot of mood and movement and expression. So I'm just keep putting my water everywhere, and we're going to paint wet on wet. You can tape your paper if you have issues with warping, or you can clip it with 4 clips. And I see I have this spray too. If sometimes paper it gets dry very quick.
Excuse me, can everybody mute themselves? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Okay.
I just muted everyone again.
Oh, okay, yes. And if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. So I have this color indigo, which is like a black, bluish, very dark, very intense color. It's very much on the cool side and very dark. I like to mix it with these cool tones. Like here I have, I believe, alizarin crimson. So be very generous with your pigments and mix a nice puddle. Grabbing more water, nice puddle with lots of pigment, because we want to try to go alla prima really and not build too many layers. So on wet, we're gonna go wild. Our background is gonna be really wild. Don't worry about going into the drawing. Don't worry about, oh, I'm gonna paint around and be super careful. I don't want you to worry about this, even if you go into the flower. So see how I'm just moving my brush, and it's looking nice, soft in every direction, in any direction and every direction. And again, I'm getting some more paint because I really want to get this dark value right away. And of course, in art, most of you know, values are very important. It's almost the most important thing. And if a painting doesn't have values, which is dark and light, it lacks something, as if it's unfinished. So see how I'm just moving my brush. I'm using still the 2-inch brush, and I'm just moving it in different directions, and it creates these nice, very soft, almost areas. A lot of my edges are still very soft. I don't paint around, I don't fill in. We're just having fun with this beautiful scene that we are seeing. And yes, so don't worry too much, and I will try to get a bit darker as I go down, imagining that the light is coming from the left, and maybe it's probably darker down below here. So I'm going to add almost no water now in my puddle. It's mostly pigment. I just add some more dark, and even a dry brush technique. But see how I'm not afraid to go into some of these petals, some of these flowers there, just covering pretty much this whole area with the background. And as we said, it's gonna get darker, so watercolor does dry lighter. So as you can see, I'm using so much pigment. If you can see my palette here, it's super dark, and it won't be dark when it dries, so there's no worry about that. And of course, we're gonna maybe paint around, and there's a little bit over here. Now sometimes you can use, if you'd like, you can use now it's a bit too late, but you can use masking fluid, let's say for these little details here that we see of the stamens, but not at this time. We can just lift. If we paint it over it, we can just have some clean water, and I can lift like one little line right here. What I like about lifting as opposed to masking fluid is so harsh. It just dries real hard. Not dries. When you take it off, like all the edges are so hard that is really doesn't look too natural. Like the whole point is to look natural. So I'm just tapping a little bit with my paper towel, and you can use a paper towel and kind of do a little. This is probably dry already, but you can kind of wipe a little bit and create some more excitement. I'm gonna use also a spray bottle with some water, and you can just sprinkle a little bit, and you're gonna get a few droplets. See how I just created this little blooms, tiny. That's also a nice little effect. So let's continue with this background. Lots of indigo, one of my favorite colors, and here is this alizarin, cooler dark red with indigo, creates some almost like a purplish violet, nice tone. And we're going to use a limited palette. As you can see, there's green, there's orange, there's yellow. We'll keep it orange yellow. And these leaves that are green, we're gonna probably mix it with some of our shadow colors so they don't look too separate from what's going on. So I'm continuing, and don't worry about painting over the flowers. There's some little dark areas, so just be very rough and painterly. That's what painterly means, like really sketching it. Squint your eyes and look at your reference. So we're seeing basically these flowers are the only light areas. those leaves just disappear. So wherever there are leaves, I'm kind of going over with this background color. All right, so here, of course, you can lift some areas if you cover them and spatter some clean. It doesn't have to, nothing has to be perfect at all. And you know, you, yeah.
How do you apply the masking fluid with a brush?
Just get a very old brush so you don't ruin it, and you can dip in the masking fluid and basically paint the areas that you want to preserve the white of the paper, and just paint that. It usually takes time to dry, but I've tried to paint over it while it's still wet and it works. Believe me, it's not picking up. So just gently put it over and it's going to work. You can, again, while it's still wet, you can do some wiping to create some movement. Go ahead.
Is the fluid kind of a glue kind of a thing?
It's like a glue, yeah, and then you have to rub it off with a regular eraser, like those hard erasers. They also sell special erasers for lifting. But yeah, it's good if you're afraid that you may lose some of your light of the paper. Many artists use it. So, okay. Now we're good. And we can go, you know, darken some of these areas, maybe right between the flowers. But for now, we're just gonna leave it as is. So the next step, what I would do is, again, using again a larger brush, I'd like to map all of these areas. So by mapping, I want to just block it, like block this, that. And we can decide, we kind of analyze a little bit our reference and decide where the focus is going to be. And I think this is going to be the focal point, this big flower right there. So we can have our brightest color mapped there, and maybe some cooler version of it behind it, for the flowers behind it, because anything that's behind needs to be a little bit cooler, not as intense. We want to create depth. Even though these flowers are right in your face, and I don't think there's too much depth in them, but still we will try to create some depth. And that's going to serve us well in our next paintings, if we paint one today or not. All right, so are we guys ready to go next step? Let's wet this area up here, and we're gonna go from outside in. Let's wet with a clean water. I love this bucket that has 3 compartments, because I can always use, when one gets dirty, I move on to the next one. That's so clean. And you can always wet this. So I want to keep these edges. Now, second important thing in watercolor are edges. No edges should be the same. They should not be harsh edges everywhere or the same. And I always say, in my students who know me well, that there shouldn't be more than 3 inches of the same edge. Create and destroy, basically. Put a blob of paint and then destroy part of it, kind of dab it or wipe it or just lift it, and that's going to create some soft, very, very nice soft elements. So with my other mop brush, I'm going to start mixing our color for these flowers. My orange is super dry, so I'm going to actually mix yellow and red, and we're gonna create a nice enchant.
Lucy, I had a question.
Yes.
So if on the in the outside, if I have like done a little bit dark somewhere, what's the way to lighten it up?
If you've made it dark, the background is, you're saying in some areas where the flowers are, you can just pop some clean water and with your brush and just wipe it with paper towel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. And you'll see, and you can do, and if some get lost, don't worry. So the whole goal is to have a lot of fun and to have interesting effects. Watercolor is not a fill in. We don't fill in by numbers. This is all supposed to be really exciting painting with lots of movement. And how you create movement is just by losing some edges and having some blobs and things and stuff going on. As long as we have our values correct and our drawing correct, you're gonna have a super exciting painting. So no fear, guys, no fear. So I'm mixing red with some yellow. Let's mix some red and yellow. And maybe I'll dab some cooler red, like a pink, because as you remember I said I just wanted maybe have some of this shadow color that we use for the background. I'm gonna grab this to tone it down a little bit, so hopefully you see it well. And I will use for this flower that's behind, and because everything is wet, hopefully it is, and if it isn't, you can always get some clean water, like wet the whole area. We're gonna do a bit of a wet on wet, and there's lots going on. There's lots of colors. You can obviously, you know, introduce some yellow now here in the middle. Flowers are so much to paint. There's really not much science besides just enjoyment. And don't also mistake that beginning artists make. They are afraid to mix a very dark pigment, more of an intense color. So if you can see, look how dark this is. I'm going to mix it with some orange. I really, you can be very generous with your pigments and just pop it right here. And then lift some areas. See, there is something here in the middle. You can just lift a bit and it creates a nice soft thing, whatever is going on. Just little by little now we are starting to introduce this cooler flower. All these edges have to be soft. I'd like you to get into the habit of really not making very harsh edges in those areas. So I'm just popping, and don't worry if you have blobs or spatter around. There's zero worries in this whole process. I mean, it has to be fun, and that's how you make it look exciting. So very, very wet. Well, sometimes be careful, because if you use too much water, then your paint kind of washes out and it ends up being really light. So my whole point is that's why we use lots of paint. So I'm still gonna grab a little bit of dark, and I want this to be three-dimensional, meaning there's some light area and it goes back. So as it goes to the bottom, towards the bottom, they're gonna get darker, these petals, and that's it. So, and of course, if my edges are too hard, you can always run some clean water right next to that edge and soften it a little bit. But it's okay to leave some harder. Some edges should be hard, some should be soft, not all edges. But as I said, so now we're not focusing on detail too much, we're just mapping the area. So let's mix a nice bright color for this focal point of this nice great flower in the middle. As you can see, it has some amazing yellow right in the middle, so be very generous with this. And again, wet it with the brush. Let's wet it. Wet on wet technique creates some super wonderful soft blends and wonderful areas. So we can always go a second layer and reinforce some of those edges, make them harder. But right now we're still painting wet on wet, and I'm just popping some very bright yellow, very bright. I think it's a cadmium with so bright. Don't worry about the details. Don't worry about the details. We can lift those later. I'm just squinting my eye, and all I see is this big yellow blob right there. I see some yellow over here. So just mapping it again. Maybe some yellow popping. And now we're gonna get a very bright. We're gonna mix some bright. I'm mixing very bright red, and let's mix orange. Yellow. If you have orange, my orange, I'm not too happy with my oranges. I like to mix my oranges somehow, so I'll get yellow and red. It looks more natural somehow. Anyway, So here we go, very bright. Very bright. If it's not too bright, just pop in more red here. A lot of paint. It's thick. This is painting basically alla prima. So I'm making it a little bit redder than there, but that's okay. That's my interpretation. It's okay. So here I'm just pop. See how I have already a bunch of spatters? So yeah, you can add some spatter around. I know it's going to continue. You can even extend it to the next flower next to it. Be over. See, I lose edges already, which is great. That's the whole point. And of course, the one behind should be a bit cooler. So I'm adding this shadow color to the original mix already, and I'm just popping little areas here, little areas there. Here is a bit darker, but we're not filling in, nothing gets filled in. And of course this foreshorten. So obviously, now speaking of three-dimensionality, it's actually better to see it on my computer. Now I'm looking at my laptop. Yes, definitely darker towards the center because the light doesn't go that far. So it does create some nice shadow somewhere here. Don't worry about the stamens. I'm just adding a little bit of dark here and definitely darker here. So if you need to soften things or blend things, just run your dry brush, clean it with your paper towel, and maybe make an interesting transition and just run it horizontally. And we have also, let's extend, kind of lift, and let's extend here some of these, create some lines. Okay, and just continue with your bright color. Yeah, if you have some nice white highlight of the paper, just you can leave it, and you can do some interesting effects with a dry brush now. So less water. How we do a dry brush technique is less water, more pigment, almost no water really. And what we do is we just drag our brush and you can drag it like that and have a bit of a texture. We'll continue. Let's make this warmer. So the flowers, nothing is the same, meaning that's how we create this 3D effect in space. So one area should be hit by a light, so one area I'm gonna make it a little bit more yellow. So here it is, and maybe it will have a white highlight of the paper. So we're just still mapping. This is too harsh. Now it's time to soften it because it's in the back. So I'm just running clean water right next to that edge right there. Now we can actually lift some of these while everything is still wet. We can lift some of these little details. I just lift it, or you can use paper towel and just dab some of it. Dab. See how it lifts. So we didn't paint around them. We're just basically lifting them from what's already there. And I know there is one right here. And of course you can just lift some lines if you want. Alright, we're continuing. I think it just needs some more warmth over here. So the next one right next to it is very light, so we'll just keep it light, and I'm just wetting here, a lot of wet, killing some of these edges, and we'll continue with the same colors. So we'll have three colors, like a yellow, warmish, reddish, orange, and a cooler red. So cooler red, I see it in some of, some of the flower. We will introduce some cool tones, so nothing should be exactly what the picture is. We're going to introduce some cool tones, and that's what makes a painting really more sophisticated, not just having like only warm tones. It could be predominantly warm, but you need to balance it with some coolness here and there. So that's a very, very good principle to remember. So I'm just adding, maybe with a dry brush, a bunch of strokes here. And everything is kind of dry already, so those edges are getting a bit dry. Maybe, and now it's time to introduce something cool, and it's your choice what color you'd like to introduce, but it should be something closer to this family. So I'm gonna mix something turquoise. I have this awesome turquoise color, but I'll grab some of the shadow color. So that's what's going to keep it in the family. So I had this puddle here with a shadow, which was indigo and alizarin. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of it, so it's not completely all turquoise, so it has some of this shadow color, so it makes this interesting gray. So this gray is gonna be my cool tone, but it's still in the family. And if it's not, just pop in some of this red that we lost, and it's gonna be a bit purple, so it's gonna make it a little bit on the purple side. So I'm choosing not to have quite greens, too many greens is gonna make it very different. So here is a little bit of a sort of a gray leaf right here. And maybe it has some orange too. Softening some of these edges. This leaf should not be popping out. It should be all in the background. Continuing with the flowers. So you know the principle. Basically now we are like mapping each one. We don't worry about the detail too much. And wet on wet really is to create this cool blends. That's the whole technique. If things are drying and creating little blooms, I like them. It's really fun. They look beautiful. So here, this area for me is very dry. I'm gonna re-wet it, re-wet the whole thing. And we're gonna quickly start adding some more color. And the colors will be, yes, the same thing. So orange, red, yellow, my orange. Yeah, if you have a good orange, definitely just go for the orange. But here, like a little bit different, and it's slightly lighter as it goes down. And see, I move my brush so fast, it kind of spatters a little bit, which is great. That's what we want, to create an exciting, fun painting. Don't worry, don't sweat it too much if, oh, it's not inside the line. We're not painting inside the line. No, not at all. We're one of those students who never painted inside the line. So we're gonna get some yellow. And I just want to emphasize some of these edges over here to create light. Yellow is a great color to really create light. We're going to add some more.
Can you move your paper up a little bit? The bottom is cut off on the screen.
Oh, okay, here.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. We're at the bottom right here. Oh, yeah. We're just right here. You guys didn't see. Thank you. Awesome. Super. All right, so here we go. And I'm just moving a little bit more yellow. And now I'm extending that yellow to those stems a little bit. But as you can see, just color is flying all over the map. And we can maybe pop in some cool tone. I have this alizarin now, maybe alizarin over here on this side, and just have bold movements, and create nice lines with our movement. Feel free to show me what you have now while you edit, if you have any questions. Let's see, what time do we have? Oh, 151. Okay, so we'll be painting this, and don't worry about the second one because the bouquet is a little bit more complex, and we can paint it. I can do a video of it, or we can paint it the third session. Up to you. So we're continuing here. Let's focus on what we have. We continue again, red and yellow and a little bit of orange, and just mapping. Here it's just only at the top, and then it cools off as it goes down. There's some areas, so as you notice, no details yet. There's no details yet, but again, leaving some areas white. So there is some bunch of edges that are white here, showing here and there, some highlight maybe. Now this one has I'm gonna add this cool tone that I mixed, which is that turquoise with the cool red that created some interesting purple. I'm gonna add this here. Now I don't know, you go ahead and we can introduce a little bit of green, but I'm very afraid when I say green, people just start popping bright green, and it just feels so out of place because it gets very different from the overall tone. So remember, we are painting atmosphere, and sometimes through light colors don't seem exactly like a photograph, or of course we're interpreting everything. So yes, you may pop in a little bit of touch of green, but mix it with this gray that you have, so at least stays in the family. And I have here, I think, a sap green, which is a bit muted. Yeah, I know in the picture is very bright. Don't worry, we're not putting bright green. And I'm muting it with some turquoise. So we just want to have a little bit of a suggestion of green. So this green is gonna come right here. And in my case, it's still looking turquoise, but yeah, maybe sap a little bit of this green, and it's gonna go well with the rest. And here again, dab certain painting techniques with nice work. Do you guys hear a lot of noise? This from the jack. Everything's closed, so hopefully that's not bothering you. That's not bothering you too much. They're basically fixing it. So here we go. I'm just putting with this green, sap green and turquoise. It created almost like a gray green. I like that color. It's very cool, and it goes well with the background. Yeah.
If I don't have a gray to mix in green, what else can I mix to make it a dull?
A duller green. So whatever green you have. Do you have turquoise? Turquoise is this light blue. If you don't, just take your green and mix it with blue. Mix it with blue. You can have a little dash of brown to tone it down. Brown always calms things down. Yes, so it's not a mega grass green, because we don't want really the attention to be on those stems. They're supporting. They're playing supporting role. The attention is on the flowers. So you can always now start popping this color, kind of a gray-green color. We can pop it maybe onto this flower a little bit. Just a little dash. And of course we are not seeing in the photo. That's why we are not doing hyperrealism, photorealism. I'm slightly, softening it again. And just have a suggestion of that color. I will get some more of this color, sap green. Oh, they probably want to talk to me. Yeah, they're knocking. There is turquoise, sap green. There is the alizarin crimson. This alizarin crimson is definitely graying it and making it all purple. So I'm just gonna add some more turquoise, gray. See, don't be afraid to mix your colors. Don't be afraid to use lots of pigment. I keep repeating this because it's a very, very, very important. Mistake number one, artists really paint so light, and that's because they're afraid of, they're thinking, oh, what if I make a mistake? Better make a mistake painting boldly than making a mistake and there's no mistake. Again, that's all fiction. There are no mistakes. So as long as you're being very bold and confident, even if you don't feel quite, just force yourself to be a little bit more confident with your brush strokes, and believe me, the result will be phenomenal. I'm drinking green tea. Go figure. In the in the summer, in the spring. Okay, so here we go. Here we have some more color. Now I'm gonna bring out maybe some of these edges, and as you can see, I just pop this gray green right next to these petals right here. I know that there is a leaf behind, so I'm emphasizing a little bit this edge. We're not being too literal. Of course we soften some of it. All of a sudden I'm getting an echo from my phone. That's so weird. Alright. Okay, sorry for the shake. Okay, here we go. This is still recording. Wonderful. If you lost some of your bright colors, okay, I apologize. I need to turn this down because for some reason I'm getting a huge echo. Alright, so maybe that's gonna work slightly better. Hopefully you're not hearing it because that would be so annoying. Alright, so if you lost some of your bright colors, I'm just getting red again and yellow, and we're gonna go a second layer and just punch those a bit. See how I'm just punching this, maybe more yellow, maybe more on the yellow side. And now I'm gonna start paying attention to details. And just a touch on the other edge. We don't outline anything. We should not outline anything. We are basically just touch, dab, and leave it alone. And edges should be start, stop. Some disappear, some reappear. So let's look at this whole area in the middle. I'm adding some detail. So basically taking some orange. Do you guys hear an echo? No? Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm basically wondering. Oh, that I'm unmuted somehow. Oh no, that's good. That's good. Okay, so here we go. Here we're gonna add some more orange, and we're gonna start now adding the details. So just dab a little bit. I lost some of this that was lifting, so you can always use some clean water. Let's just lift if we can. If we have a better paper, it will be easier to lift. If we don't, touch it up with white, or if you have some more opaque yellow. Some of these cadmium yellows can be very opaque, and they could be perfect for touch-ups like this. And there's a little bit of something going on. Obviously they're not three, as I'm seeing, and I'm looking at my computer. There are 1, 2, 3. There's six of those thingies. So we're gonna have a bit of a line over here, and maybe. So be sketchy with your brush strokes. Don't be too timid again. Even if it's not the right direction, just leave it alone. Don't try to fix it. It's gonna look better anyway because you're just following and interpreting what you're saying. So here's another one, and we will pop some of these with, of course, something more opaque, like either white or yellow. Again, for those of you who never painted, don't use your white. Don't mix any color with white. White is used very rarely, only just to bring out some highlights if you lose them, or if you lost completely the white of the paper here and there. Now, I'd like to now start adding some more dark, because my painting is starting to look very just middle value. I see I have light and medium value, but no dark. So my background really dried very light. I'm gonna grab some indigo and we're gonna do some punches with indigo, only indigo. I'm not gonna mix it with anything else. And those punches will be these areas right here that are in the back, and that's gonna really bring out the dark and the contrast of the painting. And of course you can, yes, somebody's talking. Oh no, somebody is here. Okay. All right. So we are continuing. Make sure again, not same edge everywhere. Even if you hold two brushes, one could be just to kill some of your edge right here. See, I'm holding three brushes now. So here is another one. We are gonna add some more dark, and now you can have a lot of fun with dry brush techniques. Not too much wet, because this is supposed to be very dark, so less water. And I will just be creative with your brush strokes again. Have some dry brush. We want to really make these pop a little bit more, so I will add to the dark background. So getting some more indigo, and I will add the dark. Where should we add the dark? I'm gonna add the dark right here on the right. I know actually there are some stems, so how about we pop some dark over here? Only in some areas. You just start, stop, not everywhere. And I will add some more dark at the bottom, because that will ground our painting. Obviously there's less light there, and you see you can do some spatter. I'm just by accident kind of drip my whole paint drip, and you can have some spattering and nice fun brush strokes and things going on. Just have crazy fun with that thing. More dark. You can spatter some clean water to create fun blooms if you want. But I think now that I added this dark, it added some punch to the painting. As you can see, it's now definitely is popping a little bit more. So this cool tone of gray green, I'd like to make it appear a little bit more. So maybe here it's gonna show up, and I'm doing a dry brush technique over it. Maybe some of these stems here could be added to balance the painting, because we don't want it to be so yellow, red everywhere. But again, don't go crazy green. Alright. And we're continuing. There's more. And if you lost some of the light stuff, you can still lift with a wet paper towel. My paper towel is so wet from dabbing my brush on it. You can just wipe some areas if you've lost the light. I just lift with a wet paper towel. So especially that bottom flower right here. If it doesn't lift, just put some clean water. Just put some clean water, and you can just lift some of these lines. Now we want to stay our prima and not go too many layers. We're only going to just emphasize some edges and some detail. There's not much detail really, other than these tiny little stamens, but we'll work with them. And of course you can have fun with a bunch of lines. You can just use dry brush. Here it's a little line here with a dry brush, just sketchy, have it all in one direction here. I lost a bit of this whole thing, sort of flying all over the map. So I'm just gonna dab it, and you can always use your paper towel to just dab things if they don't look right, or they look weird. And there's nothing really weird about watercolor. I don't think it ever looks weird unless it's overworked. And by weird, I mean like when you ask yourself, what is it? Like, you don't quite tell what it is. So here I'm just wiping some areas. So see, it's not a big deal if you paint it over your elements. You can always go back and lift a little bit. This happened to be a nice light area. I'll keep it light. I just maybe wanna pick up some shade by painting the negative shape and fix it a little bit. Now let's pay attention to these small details. We have 20 more minutes. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to get some more yellow because I'm running out of yellow here. How are you guys doing? Is everybody okay? Let me know if you have any questions. So far so good, having lots of fun. And now is the time to start spattering with some, bright reds around. Like I'll just grab some red and just spatter a little bit. Spatter around. It's like dust, flower dust. And we're gonna get our white, which we are gonna use very minimally, and some of our yellow. If you have cadmium or sometimes permanent, I don't know, there are all kinds of yellows, but cadmium is very strong. This one's dried out.
Lucy, I had.
Yeah.
So, can I just show my?
Yeah. Let me see. Oh wow. Look at that. Nice and bold. I love it. So, what is the challenge? Do you feel any challenge so far? I think it looks fantastic. You got all the contrast, the colors correct.
So I am a little stuck here at the bottom of the main flower. I'm not understanding how to highlight it. The base of the main flower. I feel something is missing here. This portion.
Yeah, if you feel something is missing, just drop some water, lift, or just go over with a bright color on top of it. Like, oh, maybe the drawing is not right, or you can always pop in some very, very bright color. And so, for example, here I probably overdid the bloom, so it looks too much. So you can always just pop in some clean color, clean water, and just wipe. But always advise, if you feel something's not quite, just take very bright color, mix a nice heavy pigment, and just do a few punches on your flower. As long as you have some dark areas, some shadow, and you have variation, so they don't look flat, like they don't look 2D as if you put them in between books. You know how we used to do that between pages? And it is a one flat. There's no dimension whatsoever. So let me just get some yellow and some white, and we're gonna do some amazing accents here and there. Permanent yellow. Just all my yellows. I overuse yellow. Believe me, yellow is one of my very favorite colors, and I'm running out of it for some weird reason. So yeah, I'll use what I have. I have to just go to Jerry's and get yellow, but white. Okay, so here's the white. So titanium white is the most opaque. I have Chinese white, which is gonna do the work too. but with a now smaller brush, and I use this little rigger. It's not very little, it's actually one of those thick riggers, but that's gonna create some very, very nice accents. So I just dip right inside the bottle, I mean the tube, and you can just put a few little accents here, a little bit over here, and if you lost some of your stems, not stems but stamens here, you can just do some lines with dry brush. Again, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. And again, those that I totally didn't have in the beginning, right here, you can just pop in too. I'm gonna have 1, 2. Now, good painting has opposites in design elements. So we talk big, small, refined, rough, sharp versus soft. So make sure that your painting has variety of treatments everywhere you look here. And now that we have this white, you can actually spatter a little bit of white, and that's gonna really liven up this whole painting. I love spattering on flower paintings. It does definitely does something. Don't overdo it though. It's just some areas here and there, and work in groupings. So a little group of spatter, a little group of spatter. It should look natural, as if it's not too decorative. And now from here on, you can absolutely go into more detail. You can pick some area and now go into the nitty-gritty of what's exactly going on, and maybe add some lines. Don't worry if some white areas dried really strange or the shape is strange, just leave it. This is watercolor, it's beautiful. We don't try to control it too much. We gently guide it and leave it to chance, basically. So if you want to still like have some of these edges, if you lost them, definitely you can paint the negative shape behind, and like in my case, I want to just kind of reinforce this edge a bit to make this flower pop. So just pop in some dark. There's will be some more dark coming, and this flower in the front, I still want it. I'm looking at a print, and the print is so flat compared to the actual picture. When I look at it on my computer, it's completely different. It's so weird. So I'd like to maybe darken some of these petals, so to create some more depth. So maybe paint a negative shape around this little stamen. Again, we don't want to lose the beauty of our wet on wet that we started with in the beginning, that whole spontaneity. And again, always get some clean water and soften some of these blobs that we just did. And again, the painting should look semi-abstract, semi realistic, like something in between, but it should have all these details that when people look at it, they'll be like, yes, we know what this is, and it looks really fun. It's very exciting. And again, you can have a bit of a line here. I think there is a bunch of edges here. So this is our preliminary kind of lesson on the structure and how we approach flowers. When we start painting bouquets, then there's other things that we need to be aware of, like their relationship between the flowers, how we don't have to paint each one individually, but we kind of merge them all into one. So that will be exciting too when we get to the next lesson. And again, of course, flowers, don't be afraid to use bright colors, lots of pigment. And I see how my reds always dry, so reds in general dry a bit dull. So I always go a second layer. Here I have a lot of nice, beautiful red. I don't remember which one it was. Could have been Holbein. I think they make really the best red. So I'm just gonna pop one more brush strokes here to bring these little elements, like some detail just on top of that. And Now, you know, you can go with some more detail, adding a line here, a line there. A little by little, it's going to shape up. That's exactly what you wanted it to be. So, dry brush technique, don't be afraid with very thick paint. Yeah, there's some lines, there should be some lines. It should be all just blobs everywhere. And this one here. So the one in the background, don't worry too much. If they disappear, that's fine. Because we wanted to have some depth. And again, I'm losing my darks. Sometimes the paper does absorb the paint and it really makes everything so light. So I usually punch it again with dark. So right here, right next to this main flower, I'm going to just add some more dark. And eventually it's going to have some dark value, just like I have here at the bottom. This some funky stuff is happening. It's okay.
Can I show mine, please?
Yes, absolutely. Start showing paintings, guys. Yes, let me see.
No one's allowed to laugh.
Nobody's gonna laugh. You're just gonna say, wow, I'm sure.
I would laugh.
Oh, let me see.
Can you
Oh,
see it?
wow. I can see it. Very nice. Very, very nice. So I see you have a lot of red. You have the contrast. Make sure your edges are not the same everywhere, and some are just disappearing wet on wet. So practice that technique and you will see how they're not all like similar. But I love the beginning. It looks great. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm glad that you taped this so I can continue to practice.
Yes, absolutely. We are taping it. Yeah, you guys can look at it. I'll send you the link. Oju is gonna send you the link, and you can repeat the whole process. So now, what time do we have? We have plenty of time. We have 10 minutes, 10 more minutes. No worries. So now is the time to show what you have, and and just next step will be basically adding some more details, a little punches here and there. Like these things here, I'm just gonna add maybe a bit of a, I know they're yellow, but I'll just add maybe some red or maybe a few dots or lines. So you should not worry about not being exactly like your reference. Definitely some lines help. Yeah, I like when flowers are painted almost abstract, kind of in a loose way. And I've seen a lot of very good hyper-realistic artists who paint fabulous flowers, but that is a completely different approach and it takes days and hours and days and hours. You can practice, but this is more vibrant. So any more paintings you guys gonna show? Here's awesome. There is Dini. Wow, wow, very good, very good. Wow, it's an explosion of color. I see. Oh, I should take a picture of my screen. I should take a picture of the screen. Oh, my phone is not with me. That is so amazing. Good job. Good job. I'm very happy. If you feel like your background is not dark enough, I see everybody's doing really great. Even now I'm seeing how, yeah, Jill's is nice and dark and everybody just darken some areas. Some darken some areas in that dark background. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. If you feel like you introduced too much green, just dab it with some blue and to keep it in that family. Very, very nice. Are you guys happy? How do you feel? Any questions? Any challenges? Any comments? Oh, there's Gretchen. Fun, fun, fun. Great, good job.
I had to go with this because I missed a little bit. I keep adding bookmarks.
Looks great. Looks
So
wonderful.
much fun.
That is fun. It's gonna get even more fun. I love it. This is beautiful. Okay. Wow. Very, very nice. Yes, as long as you don't have too much green, like super bright green, you're on the right track. Looking great, looking fantastic. Feel free to email if you need more detail um, critique on your paintings. I'll be happy to respond within a day. But it all looks great. Sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. Wow.
Yes, if you guys want to send it to her, if you'll email it to me, I'll forward it. And then you two can be in contact if you want, or if you have questions, I'll be glad to forward anything. I'm like the middle
Yeah, True is the middle woman. And we're going
middle
to
woman.
middle woman, yes. So definitely, little spatter. So now is the fun time. You can just with very thin brush, you can just add tiny little details with your rigger, some little lines, little spatters, and that's it. Your painting will be done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll see you not next time, but I'll definitely record a second video. This will be going up soon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, everyone. Sandy. Awesome.
Well, awesome.
Good job. Good job. Fabulous.
It's such a learning process,
It is. It is, but it's fun.
and you just have to practice over and over.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's all about the practice. And this one was not easy because it had a dark background. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, but
I had stepped away. Are these only an hour and a half? I was thinking it was 2 hours for some reason. Just an hour and a half? Okay.
Yeah, hour and a half. I mean, you're welcome to hang out with us for 6 more minutes.
oh, we have plenty of time. Is it 6 more?
Questions.
No, I know Gretchen. She's fabulous. She's unbelievable. So yeah, we'll keep going. Yeah, this dark background again. I keep repeating. It's not easy because instead of focusing on the flowers, now we have the relationship between background versus flowers. But you did a fabulous job. As long as they all intermingle, like background going into the flowers and flowers into background, and it's just all flying all over the map. And now, see, my spatter is not even showing anymore, so I'm gonna dig into the white a little bit, and you guys just keep painting like a little bit more, like da 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 here, having some more lines, maybe just a little bit of line.
Were you saying something early on in the middle about leaving the edges unpainted, like the very tips of the petals? What's that?
The very tips. Oh yeah, and now there are tips. I don't think I mentioned the tips, but now is the kind of a detail time when you want to really add some details. You can just kind of do a little dot here and there if you have just to show the shape and some I may have mentioned the edges.
You don't have to make all your edges look the same.
Yes.
You don't want every edge to
See, Jewel, she's listening. She's listening. The edges, yeah. So there's no edge that looks the same, and Gretchen knows the. Yeah, but the tips, you definitely can add some little dots here and there to kind of give anything that can help with the shape, like showing the form without spelling it out. So we're just giving a suggestion. So if you want to give a suggestion of a little sharp something, we just put a little dot.
Okay.
So definitely some yellows are really nice and opaque, and I'll put some yellow highlights for sure. But leave it spontaneous if you can. And you can add, like, make up certain things. Sometimes the photo is maybe missing details, so you can always add a few, lines here and there just to make it a little bit more exciting. A little dots. And I use the side of my brush. See, I just got a lot of yellow here and just put dab, dab. Nobody knows where it's coming from. It's not in the photo, but it does add something. A little bit of detail, and it gives this sense of, yes, flowers. So yellow is definitely perfect color for that. And you can, again, spatter some, even, you know, drip, like dip your brush. Am I teaching drool? Oh no, I still have my students. I'm like, I'm just teaching drool. Now I have Gretchen and
I'm
everyone.
still here.
You guys here, I see you. Awesome. So, you know, I make a little.
Done, finally done.
I'm getting a lot of yellow here, making a nice puddle, and you can just see, just look at this.
Total beginner.
Oh wow, look at that. That's great. That's fabulous. Fantastic. Yeah. You guys try this puddle with yellow and just squeeze your brush with the color, and you're gonna have now a little droplets of color. Like basically squeezing it like laundry. Whatever drips. And dripping some colors. Now is the fun part. Like the finishing touches are gonna really bring this out. And definitely the yellow is a good color. I never talk about accent color. My other students who know me, they know about this concept of an accent color. And usually I introduce some unexpected color in some few areas, like out of the blue, not too much, in just some areas. So you can always, you know, for example, I'll just give you an example. You can get turquoise, like a bright, bright, bright turquoise that we don't see anywhere. We're still teaching. So here is turquoise. This Holbein turquoise is so opaque, it's fantastic. And you don't see any turquoise anywhere, but I will actually dab here and there. Just a little dots, and maybe some brush, just brush marks, really. And that's, I don't know if you can see it in the video really, but they're very minimal. And as long as you keep your accents to like 1% of the painting, is gonna create some additional interest, and even a little spatter with that accent. People will be like, wow, and they will go right there in that thing. So, so these are all concepts of design. Like if you see a nice design, even if it's completely geometric, as long as there's certain principles, we have big, small, rough, smooth, thick, thin. As long as we have these principles and these accents, you can have a little dot in something that is a different color, very unexpected. It does create the interest. But these are all principles of art that we are getting very acquainted.